So I've got my cups, pots, whatever you want to call them, ready to go. I've got 6 rows. Got 7 rows. I want to have an extra one for the bunching onions. Bunching onions are pretty small compared to, in terms of like what you're going to get harvest wise. That's something you should think about is like what are you going to yield from the size of the pot that you're in. Some of these, like I've got lettuce too that I'm sure will eventually outgrow these small solo cups. So you might want to think about that in terms of your spacing since you're probably working in a limited space. Maybe you've got all the space in the world and that's great. You don't have to think about this. But for people getting started or just your average person getting started or even midlife or whatever, taking up a hobby, it don't really matter. But try to think about how to maximize your space. But I'm going to start with this is called Jung's Sweet Repeat Mix. It's a green and red loose leaf. I've grown this out in the garden, so I know what it is. I know what it looks like. It just looks like your green salad bowl, red salad bowl. I've grown green salad bowl under lights before, so I know it works under these conditions, but it does get big. And so when it gets bigger, I'll probably have to transplant it into bigger pots. That's fine. I'm just planting this one because I know it will grow under lights. Some things, this is not enough. It won't work. Like there's not enough lumens, power, whatever. There's not enough light. It won't work. Usually I just do a couple of seeds. Nothing real fancy here. Just I'll get a couple, 2 or maybe even 3 in there. Cover it back over, and then always when you're in a limited amount of space like this, just when they start to come up and you notice one of them looks like it's got a better chance at surviving, that's the one you keep, and the other two I usually end up pulling them, throwing them in with my chicken's breakfast. I let them have it. Part of this will probably go to them, I mean, if I hopefully get too much of this, really, but it's never too much because I can feed it to the hens or um, maybe even market this. It's possible. I don't know. I wonder sometimes. I know there's going to be some people that are okay with it. You can't buy this with I'm going to piss people off. You can't buy you can't buy this with a credit card or food stamps or anything like that. You know, says the only thing that makes this homestead go is cash money on the barrelhead. I've always been a firm believer that you should pay your bills. So that's what it's like anything that the government does, I just automatically assume it's a bunch of crap. They don't pay their bills. That's a bunch of crap. They borrow money. They print money. They borrow money. They wouldn't have all that debt if they actually paid their bills every once in a while. They wouldn't have all that debt. Um, all right, but anyway, I don't know. That's their problem. I'm trying to distance myself from them as much as possible because I don't agree with most of the stuff they do. You probably notice like the Amish doesn't get along with the government very good, and they're in a similar mindset, I think. Maybe even more so, more committed to the idea that any government, because it's in the Bible, it's in the Bible. There's not one government, and I don't care if it's Democrat, socialist, communist, if it's a dictator, if it's capitalism, whatever. They all fail. Period. Every time, no matter what. It's a human system. It's a man-made. Anything man-made is gonna fail, break, collapse, need to be replaced. They're just trying to see how much they can. They always said it at work. They'd always say, we're just trying to milk it. They give you an easy job, something where you're not doing very much. You're still getting paid your hourly wages, but you're not doing very much. And it's like, well, he's just trying to milk it, trying to get as much out of it as he can. That's what we're doing with our current system of governance. I think is we're just milking it. We're trying to see just how much we can get before we have to do something about it. Because it's every country goes through this at some time or another. We're just maybe it hasn't really broken yet, kind of, sort of. I guess there's a lot more that could still happen, but it's gonna happen. You know it. It's gonna happen. You just have to look back at history. Every country, every government, all throughout history, they always hit a wall. Our country is about 200 and almost 60 years old. It's a long run for not having to be, if you think about any piece of machinery you've ever owned, any piece of equipment you've ever owned, it's like if you could get 260 years out of it without having to replace it, without having to, we've had to amend things, sure. I'm getting way off topic. Maybe I'm not, because I mean, the whole point of growing your own food is so that way you don't have to rely on. And so, like all the people that just found out, hey, the government doesn't have an unlimited supply of money when they got their SNAP funds pulled away, it's like that's not a foolproof. You can't rely on that. Somebody somewhere was growing all that food that these SNAP recipients were getting. It really irritates me. I don't, because it's like, well, wait a minute. I'm growing healthy stuff. I'm trying to anyway. Organic, healthy fruits, vegetables, eggs, chicken. And I'm doing it organically. And then if I sell enough, and it's only like $500 a year, if you sell more than $500, if you make more than $500 a year, at least where I live, that suddenly becomes taxable income. So now they're taxing me off of my fruits and vegetables so that way they can give it to people who don't work so they can, and the most commonly bought items with SNAP is junk food. And I'm like, so you're taking money away from me, giving it to people that don't work, won't work. I mean, sure, some of them, maybe they're old or disabled, but there should be other things for them to use, not. It's very frustrating. I'm supposed to grow healthy, I'm supposed to grow food so that way they can tax me and then give it to somebody else that won't do anything. They could do this. This is not this is not labor intensive at all. It's maybe a little bit time consuming, but if they don't have a job, this could become their job. And then at least that way they're producing something instead of just taking away. I mean, maybe you'd be like, well, I'm on a fixed income or I don't have an income at the moment. I'm like, well, those are just excuses. You can find ways. There's plenty of resources. You can get, this is America, man. If you can't get your hands on some resources here in this country where they just give stuff away all the time, I don't want to hear that. That's just a bunch of excuses. So that's the lettuce. And lettuce, so I'm in a cold basement. I mean, we do have heat, but it's cooler than the rest of the house, and the basement's cooler than the rest of the house because it's a basement. But that's okay. These are cool weather crops. They'll germinate just fine in a basement. And they'll actually prefer it to be a little bit cooler, like 65, 75 degrees, maybe even lower than, it's not 75 down here, but yeah, 60, 70 degrees. More than sufficient for what I'm doing. If I walked away, you can't see me now. It's all right. I just pissed off like 42 million Americans or something like that when I said SNAP is a bunch of baloney. Is it 42 million? It's crazy. And then I'll do kale and I'll do bunching onion, and so that should be. Those are all things that by themselves would be really good. You could do other things, and I'll probably do other ones, make other videos showing you some other things. But and then I'll also do like updates on this so you can see that it works. Like if you're not willing to invest right away your time or your money, your electricity or whatever, like I understand if you're like, well, I don't know, I didn't see it work, so I'm not sure. And I'm like, all right, well then I'll just kind of go through this, maybe build up your confidence in this a little bit, so that way maybe you'll be like, you know what, I could do something like that. And it's a passive system, so once you, yeah, you're gonna have to water it. There's, you can look into it. I'm sure there's ways that you can get it hooked up so it'll water itself. Have like self-wicking pots and things like that. Reservoir trays that you can do. That's kind of why it's like this 2 cup system, sort of like a reservoir tray down there, so it doesn't dry out too fast. Um, I have seen some very extravagant systems, and you can find them too, I'm sure, if you look. Mine's, I mean, simple shop lights and things that you can get at any hardware store, grocery store. Walmart would have this kind of stuff. Amazon, you could order it. There's all kinds of places that you could get this sort of stuff and make it work for you. The tables, I mean, that's just, again, you can scrap if you're scrappy like me. I found a lot of this material is just recycled material, old pallets that I pulled apart and put back together in a table. Um, or just scrap pieces of wood that I had laying around from other projects. So this is a brassica. Kale is in that. I think it's a, yeah, brassica. So brassicas are things like kale, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, cauliflower. They're all basically the same plant, just cauliflower and broccoli, those were bred for the flowers. Kale was bred for the leaves. Brussels sprouts for the sprouts. I mean, it's in the name. But they're all the same plant. That's why it's always these little black balls is what they look. Just little teeny tiny. And they roll right off the end there. So I'll do the same thing here. I'll pot these up, and then when they start to emerge, when they get to be, once they start showing their true leaves, get a couple inches tall, and you're looking at it like, all right, this one's leggy, this one's stumpy, this one looks about right, and then I'll pluck whichever ones look the least appetizing and keep the one that does the best. And it's a very much a cut and come again. You dump a bunch of seeds in there. That's okay. I've got a bunch. So that means you can harvest it and then continue. You can harvest it. I don't know how many harvests you could really get feasibly before it starts to get bitter. It will eventually start to get bitter, but you could feasibly get 2, 3, 4 different harvests off of the same plant before you would have to pot it back, start over with new seeds. And I like to recycle my potting mix. I throw it into an empty bag and recycle it and let it just kind of sit in there and let the old plant material rot down, kind of like your composting. But it's indoor composting. And then I'll spritz in some organic fertilizer to kind of amend it. Sometimes you just have to break down and buy a new bag of potting mix. You can make your own potting mix, but you want to sterilize it so that way you're not bringing in pests and disease and things like that. or you have to be really good at pest management. Like if you've got, so I just had like some ladybugs that were sitting on my trash can lid, the inside of the trash can lid, to the outside trash, and they were all just huddled together and not doing anything, like basically going into their, I guess they hibernate or go in their dormant state or whatever. And I'm like, well, because I've seen where you can purchase ladybugs online, and I tried that once, and half of them were dead when they got here. I'm like, well, that doesn't seem like a good deal for the ladybugs. But since these ones were basically wild and outside, and I'm like, I bet I could just, and I just scooped them up and brought them in the house, and I had a little bit of this aphid problem going on. That's why I was looking around. And within a few days, the aphids were gone because the ladybugs, that's what they eat. One of the things they eat. I just brought them in the house. I'm like, hey. So if you're good at pest control, which you're going to want to be, you don't want to be spraying pesticides all over the place, because that's one of the benefits to growing your own food, is that you're not having to use pesticides or chemicals or chemical fertilizer or anything like that. This is something that bugs me. I don't know if it bugs you. Probably about to. But I Googled it, and you can Google it too, but less than 1% of all the farmland in the United States is certified organic. That's not to say that more farmland isn't organic, it's just it's representational. I mean, if only 1% of the farmland is certified organic, that shows you that not many people know or care to purchase organic. But the problem is that that means the majority of the things that we're consuming, they use industrial methods of agriculture. And in the industrial model of agriculture, you're using glyphosate, you're using herbicides and fungicides and pesticides and all of those different suicide, what I compare it to. But it's a poison, that's why it's. And then the other thing, so barring that, you'd be like, oh, my liver can handle all those different places. Minuscule, right? I mean, a little bug eats it. They're little, they're teeny tiny. That's why but they don't eat very much. It scales up. You eat a lot more, so you're getting a lot more of that pesticide. It scales up. You notice your health isn't as good as it should be. It's like 60, 70% of Americans are overweight and obese, and it's like that shouldn't be the case. Good Lord. That's why I do what I do. But another thing people might not realize if you're not getting organic is the fertilizer that they use is it's a byproduct of big oil. It's the same stuff that when you get a barrel of crude oil, it's like 55 gallons or something for a barrel of crude oil, and the top shell, the top part of that is going to be like your premium high grade, like your jet fuel for planes and helicopters and probably military equipment. That's going to be like your top part of that barrel, the really good stuff. And then as you start working your way down, you get into commercial, your gasoline and your diesel, and then your oil, like your 10W30 for your motor. And then when you get to the bottom of it, the very bottom of it, well, there's always some sludge left over that they used to just get rid of. They didn't know what to do with it. They would just throw. Well, somebody figured out that bottom part of that barrel has a lot of nitrogen in it, which plants eat nitrogen. So they whipped it up in a lab, and they realized you can make fertilizer that crops are just going to eat it up like crazy. But when they said something like RFK said, yeah, we're going to get the red 40 out of the food because it's a petroleum based food coloring, and we're going to get that out and we're going to replace it with a food based dye. And I'm like, well, big whoop, because most of the food that we produce uses petroleum as a fertilizer. So you really didn't do anything. Most politicians just say we're going to do something, but you didn't do anything. Not really. Not to those of us who understand. It's sort of like a feel good story. It's total bullshit. They didn't solve anything. They still haven't done it yet, though. That's the other thing. I think they said they might be able to get the red dye 40 out by 2020, by the end of 2027. And I'm like, well, again, promises, promises, but we all know that in 2028 it's an election year, so they probably won't actually do anything. They'll probably just push it off, push it off, push it off, and then a new president will come in, and that won't even be a topic anymore. They'll forget all about it. So that's why I'm like, you should be growing your own food. That's why this is important. You should be growing your own food so you can control how it's grown, not just because not just because it could save you money, but because it could really save you money in terms of your health. I heard it said once that you either pay the farmer or you pay the doctor. And what I mean by that is if you're buying low quality food with all the pesticides and the glyphosate and the petroleum based fertilizers, well, then you are going to end up getting sick all the time, and you're going to need to pay a doctor to bandage you up, as it were. Because that's what's making you sick, is that that's not a good quality meal. When we had the pandemic, it hit the overweight and the obese people really hard. I guess they didn't know this, but 80% of your immune system, 70 to 80% of your immune system is located in the gut, in the digestive tract, in the gut. That's where, because that's where, everything goes in. That's the most prevalent for bacteria and things to get in. You're eating it, so that's how it gets in. So you have to have a really good, strong immune system in your digestive tract. That's why your, stomach acid. People are goofy. This is another goofy thing that they do. So I'm just making air time here. But another goofy thing that people do is when they get heartburn and they think, oh, I need to cut down on my stomach acid because I have heartburn. And it's like, well, the proper term is indigestion. You have food that didn't get digested. And when you take an antacid, you're weakening your stomach acid. Your stomach is acidic for a reason. The food isn't being digested because it's not real food. It's got a lot of preservatives in it that prevents it from being broken down. So it just sits there like a wad in your stomach and it doesn't get digested. And that upsets your stomach. It's churning, it's trying to break it down, and then it starts splashing up. What you really need to be doing is increasing your stomach acid. Maybe take some apple cider vinegar. Maybe don't drink it if you've already got heartburn and it burns right here. Don't throw acid on it. It's like putting gas on a fire. But they do make little gummy bears, little capsules that you can take as a pill. Don't take an antacid. That's just gonna. It'll reduce the burn as it splashes up, but the food still isn't gonna get absorbed, digested properly. You need to be taking something that'll help increase your stomach acid, and help break it down better. Um, anyway, so now I'm doing some bunching onion. You're not gonna get like a full-sized onion unless you have like really big lights, and onions take a lot of time. It can, it's one of the first things that you plant in your garden in the spring, and it's usually one of the last things that you get harvested. So it takes a long time to get a mature onion. I wouldn't grow it that way, but the little, like the Japanese bunching onions, or this one's just it says it's a hybrid bunching onion. And these little guys, they should grow fine. I've grown them in windows too. That's another thing you can do if you don't have lights yet. If you have large, like bay windows, south facing windows, something with a window sill that you can set one of these on. And that's another brilliant thing about having the one cup that doesn't have any holes in it, is so that way you can water it without rotting out your windowsill with all that extra water. It catches the water so it doesn't rot out your windowsill. But that should be enough light for, again, these types of things. That they don't use a lot of light. They're not going to grow really fast, but they'll grow. You could probably grow some herbs that way. I don't know what to expect really. If you're trying to grow like a big bushy basil plant, you're going to have a hard time with that. But you can maybe grow a small one. I was talking about foods making my stomach growl. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I started this as like a homesteading gardening channel, but it's also kind of turning into like I'm lecturing you on your nutrition too. I'm sorry, I don't mean to do that. Um, I really am just trying to be helpful, though. These are the things people should be doing. If we have 60 to 70% of Americans are overweight and obese, and that's talking like my age group and younger, 18 to 30 years old. I'm 33. I don't know if I should be putting out personal information like that. The beauty of it is, though, I mean, your personal information's everywhere anyway, so it don't really matter. It's just the kind of people that are in the world. If there's sharks in the world anyway, they're going to try to eat you alive anyway. But there should be good people in the world too to balance them out. Should be. That's why it's good to have a community, good to have a village of people that way. If something comes up and it's like, hey, I can do this in exchange for that. If you're somebody that knows about cyber crime, like you're real techie, real into tech and technology and computers and internet and all these things that I don't know and wouldn't even begin to describe, but you're not but you don't have like an encyclopedia of knowledge in your head about different plants and plant species and what's edible and what isn't and why you should be eating organic and all these. Well, that's where I come in, and we can just kind of trade that back and forth. That would be what a community would be doing, just helping one another. Unless, of course, we're at war with each other. That's probably the least helpful you could ever be. You're not helping anybody. If you're trying to kill them, you ain't trying to help them. So that's not very helpful at all. No, it's much better to use your skills and be productive. Focus on the things we need: food, clean water, shelter, security, companionship. Those are the things we need. We're social beings. We're social creatures. Human beings are social creatures at heart. I notice my birds, they like to stay in a group. Even when it's hot outside, they stick together. You'd say, well, right now it's because it's cold. They're staying together, they're huddling together to stay warm. And it's like, that's probably true. But they do that anyway. They're social animals. They like to be together. It helps with a lot of things too. If you're around like-minded individuals, just good-hearted like-minded individuals, that can help with anxiety and stress. And you can spitball ideas on, if somebody is just open about, hey, I'm having this problem here, and somebody else is like, hey, I've been through that, I know how to help you. I've done it too. I've been there, I've done that. This is how I did it. You could probably adjust it to where it works best for you. Kind of like this. This is what works for me, but you can always add to it or take from it what you want and then make it your own. That's absolutely what, that's absolutely. I don't have a patent on any of this. You go right ahead. I'm sharing it because I think it needs to be shared. I ain't going to be around forever anyway. So what I know, I should be trying to pass that knowledge on anyway. I shouldn't be hoarding it and keeping it to myself. I should be trying to get it out there. That way it benefits more than just me. I take it to my grave. I didn't benefit anybody but myself. Well, I've about got all of these potted up, and this video has ran on long enough. So I'm going to probably cut it there. But, I mean, I'll come back, I'll come back probably after things have started to come up and keep things updated. Maybe try to make it a shorter video. I got off on a rant there. Everyone else does it. Why not me? But in the meantime, stay busy, stay dirty.